Tesla's Robotaxi is finally here, but how fast can it really scale? Everyone talks about software, FSD, and charging stations, but what if the real bottleneck is lawsuits? If Tesla deploys 1 million Robotaxis by 2028, even just one lawsuit per car every 10 years turns into 100,000 cases a year. Today, we're breaking down the true limits of scaling, charging, cleaning, service, servers, regulatory roadblocks, and more importantly, legal firepower. Robotaxi is a $1 trillion idea, but infrastructure and liability could decide how fast it gets there. Let's get into it. We got Cern Basher here with us today. He's a chartered financial analyst who's currently running his own investment advisory firm called BrilliantAdvice. Welcome, Cern.
Hi, Herbert. I am coming to you from Austin, Texas, which is ground zero for Robotaxi right now.
Yeah, exactly. You have been taking Robotaxi rides since Sunday when you and I were there, and every day you've been taking a ride. So, it's here, it's happening. And now the question people have, now that it's launched and with only 10 cars, so now people are asking, how fast can it scale? When could it happen? And then what are the roadblocks? There's people that have been saying this, for example, I'll show you this on screen here. Thank you, Craig. He said, just watched a video which made me think of a potential bottleneck for the Robotaxi cybercab business. He's tagging you because he wanted you to do a video on this. Does Tesla have enough chargers? It takes a lot of time and planning to create a charging station with 12 chargers. If Tesla puts 100,000 Robotaxis on the road in 2026 and 1 million in 2028, how many charging stations are going to be required? So if the cybercab has a range of 200 miles, drives 400 miles a day, it will have to charge 2 times during that day and once at night. Charging congestion could become a problem in many urban areas. Let me know in a video with Herbert. Now, I don't think we're going to talk about this particular concern right now, but it just shows you that there are people realizing now, and this, mayor is saying, once the initial excitement settles down, reality is going to start settling in on why the Robotaxi business will not be a quick ramp up into the millions or even hundreds of thousands. I'm still expecting only, get this, 3,000 to 4,000 by Q4 2027. I don't know. Why are people like this? They're just 3,000 to 4,000 by 2024, the end of the year 2027. And then they think, oh my God, there's going to be all these bottlenecks. So let's go down that list. And then we're going to talk about probably the most important one, which I think you've identified. But the first one is, is FSD ready to go scale? The second one is charging system, regulatory approval. What else is there? Just tell me what you're thinking about those kind of that list.
Yeah, let's talk about FSD first. FSD needs to be continually improved. We know that, right? FSD is on this trajectory of rapid improvement. Every time they come up with a new model, it solves all kinds of issues. It just becomes better and better. You can think maybe of FSD as maybe a 20-year-old human driver or something at this point. Although some people think it's probably better than the average human driver. The problem is that we're all expecting perfection from FSD. We're expecting it to never go in the wrong lane. We're expecting FSD to, drive perfectly. And in reality, we don't need that. That is not necessary in order for FSD to be a massive improvement over the issues of human driving today. So that's the first thing. But certainly FSD is going to need to be continually improved. Tesla has invested in the compute, and they will continue to do so to be able to rapidly improve FSD over time. I think this is going to be an effort in the works now for at least another decade, if not longer, just to make FSD that much better. So we're at the point now where it's a viable Robotaxi, essentially viable software for Robotaxi service. But again, it's not perfect. So they'll just continue to improve that. The good news is, as FSD gets better and better, that will allow Tesla to ramp that much faster because there'll be fewer and fewer issues in driving the vehicle. So that's I think the important thing to say about that. In terms of charging infrastructure, I think this is another interesting one. I would differ with Craig's assumption there that the vehicles, if they do 400 miles a day, that they would need to be charged twice. My rough estimate is they may do maybe 300 miles a day, and that's well within Model Y's range for a day. But let's just assume he's right. Let's just assume that the vehicle is doing 400 miles a day and needs to be charged twice. So there is definitely a massive need for charging infrastructure. Does that all need to be superchargers? No, it doesn't. Tesla has talked about before about people being shepherds for a flock, right? So that would be one way to massively scale charging, is to charge them in people's homes. Just like we have shepherds for those scooters that are out there now.
Yeah.
People collect those things and charge them up. You could
Hmm.
do essentially the same thing with robotaxis. That would be maybe an interim solution. The other thing too is, Tesla can use mobile megapacks to charge vehicles if there's a charging infrastructure issue. So there's all kinds of temporary solutions I think that Tesla could deploy when it comes to charging. Um, but ultimately, they will build the necessary charging infrastructure that we need for the fleet. And ultimately, for Cybercab, it'll be the inductive chargers.
Yeah. They also have service centers and sales centers all over the US at this point. And so there's a lot of potential for them to just use those as nighttime places where these things will go charging. And I don't know if you have to build up more, but for me, it's like, how fast can they build these superchargers? It doesn't sense, I don't have the sense that it's taken them a long time. They've been spending all this time, the last several years, for perfecting how fast this is. When they make those supercharger stations now, they do it in the factory. And when they drop it off at a location, it's basically dropping. It's like they just drop it and it's done. Like there's no prep. They reduce how much prep work required in a location and all that. It's done there. They don't. In the past, they used to have to like parts and connect it all together while they're there. Now it's a one item, one connected unit. So yeah, I'm not worried about this at all. But yeah.
And I believe I saw a post today from the head of Tesla's supercharging unit.
Yes.
And I think he was essentially talking about how they're improving the speed at which they're able to, build these prefabricated units.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, Tesla knows how quickly they want to scale this business. So I'm pretty confident that they've followed through in terms of, oh, okay, yeah, we need to charge these cars. How do we need to scale the charging side of things? I'm pretty sure that they've given that some thought, right? This is not suddenly they're waking up today and saying, oh my gosh, we've got Robotaxi we've just unveiled. Oh, now we need to think about charging, right? So I don't think that's going to be a big issue at all. Maybe locally in certain areas at certain times that will be an issue. We've seen Tesla address charging issues before. So, maybe it's a 6 or 9 month issue in a particular location, but I don't really see it as being a huge impediment to scaling a robotaxi business.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the regulatory, that remains to be seen, right? We don't yet know. We've got some pilot cities that we know are already pretty, autonomous vehicle friendly. Basically, you could just follow in Waymo's footsteps. So you can go to Phoenix. You can go to probably any city in Texas. You can go to Los Angeles and San Francisco. You can go to Atlanta. It's my understanding that Florida has some pretty nice, reasonable laws for as far as autonomous vehicle operations. So I think there's lots of places that Tesla could scale to initially that are pretty friendly. Then you might get to a point where there are some roadblocks, and absent any sort of federal legislation, then at that point you could have an issue with scaling. Now, as you and I talked about on our last show, if there is, and I think this is actually a really interesting thing to think about, and I've gotten quite a bit of feedback from people on this.
Yeah,
if there is a massive roadblock, then Tesla can pivot and say, okay, we're going to pivot to dominate the market strategy in a particular city, state, area of the country, and show people what's possible. Flood the market with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of robotaxis, say in the state of Texas, and show people what this robotaxi future looks like in the state of Texas. And by doing so, you're giving the people in the state of Texas a remarkable deal. You're driving down transportation costs. And at the same time, you're showing every single other politician in every single other state how much their citizens can benefit and reduce transportation costs and so on. That to me is kind of a fallback strategy. I don't see Tesla just saying, "Oh, we're only going to focus on we're only going to focus on Texas right now." I think they are going to expand as Elon intended into California by the end of this year. So I don't think the dominate a market strategy is the sort of their number one focus, but it could be an interesting fallback position.
I like it a lot. I mean, so let's put some numbers here. 10,000 cars. I think people are saying that in city of Chicago they need 10,000 Ubers. Then somebody also said, who works at Uber, said, well, actually they don't actually have 10,000. They just have that many drivers, but not everybody's out in the same time. Yep. But let's assume it's 10,000 to replace Uber, which is just ride hail that exists today. That's example. That's if you charge $4 or $5 per mile, which is what they're doing now. What happens though if you say, okay, I want to put 100,000 in all of Texas, or even more, because now you don't just go for the ride hail service, you go for the urban transport or food and everything. I don't know if they can do food quite yet, but like things that what happens if they charge only $2 or $1 a mile?
You go after rental cars.
You
go after subprime auto. You go after public transportation in some areas. Ultimately you go after car ownership itself, which is a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah. So theoretically, you can go way more than just 10,000 cars per city. You can do, more than that, and then you flood the market, as you're saying, for all of Texas, all of California, and you might be able to get there maybe 500,000 just that alone, and then you pick another state. So that could be one strategy. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the challenge with that, even if that is something that happens, you still have the fact that as you put more and more vehicles on the road, you're still going to have some incident of accidents, some accident rate, some injury rate, and some death rate. That's just the nature of driving on the roads. It may or may not be Tesla's fault, by the way. These accidents, injuries, and deaths that happen might be something that FSD makes a mistake on, or it might not be. It might just be other human drivers crashing into robotaxis. Nonetheless, you're going to have an issue where you have to look at every single one of these situations and figure out who's at fault, and in Tesla's case, how much they might have to pay, how much the settlement might be, right? The legal costs, the court costs, the settlement costs. And so there, again, that might be a little bit of a limit on scaling. And I wrote a post about that. Perhaps we can go through that a little bit.
Let's do that. Yeah. I really like this thought that you had here, Cern. This is actually pretty brilliant when you think about it. Like basically everybody else is stuck on the things we just covered, right? Oh, they're going to scale it. But there are going to be accidents, and somebody has to pay for that accident, and it's going to be the robotaxi vendor. It's in this case, Tesla is going to take on the liability of the insurance. Can they afford that? And then you've kind of modeled it out saying, well, if there's 100,000 cars, here's how many accidents. If it's 1 million cars, here's how many accidents. And here's what it would be if they rolled it out when FSD is not quite yet safer than human. Here's what happens when it is safer. Here's what happens when it's even more safer. And so that gives you and us, you'll share with us exactly when you think Tesla could actually start scaling, and what they might just absorb it, right? Let's take a look at this. So you've got this great post that you did. People should follow you at X at Cern Basher. These posts come out, lots of research. Robotaxi scaling the number of lawsuits. What limits does Tesla have in scaling their robotaxi network? Rather than rehash all the usual ones, which we just did, FSD limits, charging infrastructure, regulatory roadblocks, one area that hasn't received much discussion is Tesla's willingness or capacity for handling lawsuits as a limit on scaling. So at the point that FSD moves from your personal auto insurance to Tesla's product liability responsibility, the number of lawsuits could be correlated with the accident rate, acting as a potential limiter on scaling. That's a really good thought. Let's say at an accident rate of 1 per 1 million miles, a 99.999% liability, and each vehicle travels 100,000 miles per year, you can expect an accident once every 10 years per vehicle. Let's say that if each accident results in a lawsuit, of course it will, especially if it's a large corporation. People are saying that I'm going to sue you if you're owned by a company. You would expect to deal with 1 lawsuit per vehicle every 10 years or 0.1 lawsuits per vehicle per year. So if you have 1,000 fleets, results in 100 lawsuits per year. That's not bad. Maybe they'll go, okay, 1,000 fleets, we'll eat it. But what happens if you scale to 1 million vehicles? Now you're calculating 100,000 lawsuits per year. Can they do this?
Yeah, it sounds a bit daunting, doesn't it, when you look at this at scale? Now, there's a lot of distance between 1,000 vehicles and 1 million vehicles.
Yeah.
And also, I should just say at the outset here that I'm looking at accident rate, but you could also substitute injury rate, or if you prefer death rate. However you want to look at this, maybe injury rate is the better way to look at it, because there's going to be a lot of accidents where they're just minor little things, and no one's going to sue Tesla over Tesla running into the curb, or who knows? Perhaps they will. But there's going to be some frequency of accidents, injuries, and deaths. And so the question is then, at scale, what's Tesla's willingness or capacity to deal with this? This is just a reality of operating this kind of business. It's much like airlines, right? Now, the good thing about flying is we don't have a whole lot of accidents. They've gotten flying to the point where it's pretty darn safe. So this is not a huge issue for airlines, but it is very costly when a plane does fall out of the sky for some reason. There's quite a bit of money that has to change hands there. So yeah, this for me is something that I thought about in terms of, could this be the kind of the ultimate limiter on scale? And I think my conclusion is potentially, but not likely. We worry about the courts. We worry about judges that are kind of act in a punitive way or negative way towards Tesla, or whatever it is. We worry about that, but ultimately, Tesla will have a massive amount of data on their side. If you think about a traditional auto accident today, there is no telemetry data. There are no cameras from every single angle, right? It's a question of what one driver said versus the other driver. And if you're lucky, you've got witnesses. But I was a witness to an auto accident recently. And even though I saw the accident, I got it wrong. I mean, we know that witness testimony is terrible. But with cameras and telemetry, a lot of those issues go away. You know exactly what the Robotaxi was doing. Was it accelerating? Was it braking? Did it turn to avoid? Did the other vehicle, come at it? The camera data will show all that. So that will go a long way, I think, to reducing the cost of every single lawsuit. But there will be a certain portion of them that will be Tesla's fault. It just has to be. After if you've got a million vehicle fleet, you're gonna be at fault for something, right? So then the question is, how much will that cost? I ran some numbers and I said, and perhaps you have this here, Herbert, that you can just show on the screen in terms of the calculations. And I used accident, but again, you can substitute injury or death. If each accident costs, at the bottom of the page there, $250,000 to settle. And by the way, typical auto accidents, I think the settlements range between about 40,000 up to about 500,000. Some of them can be pretty high depending on what the issue is. But let's say it's 250, just to pick a number. So with 10,000 lawsuits, that's 2.5 billion in annual legal costs. At the point, though, think about this. At the point that Tesla has 1 million vehicles on the road, how much revenue is this business producing?
Is it 10,000 lawsuits is 1 million vehicles? Yes.
Well, yeah. Sorry. Previous to that, we skipped the paragraph above here. Let's say as Tesla improves FSD, now they're at 99.59 reliability.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the 100,000 accidents goes down to 10,000. So this is why it's important for Tesla to continue to work on FSD.
Yeah.
It's the march of nines, right? And the more that FSD is reliable and has less accidents, injuries, and deaths, the less lawsuits they're going to have to deal with, and the less costly it's going to be. Now, let's say that we're still dealing with 100,000 lawsuits and not 10,000 there in that last paragraph.
Right.
And you're looking at 25 billion of annual legal costs. Right? And that would be an issue. So this is where it does matter. But if they can get the number down for 1 million vehicle fleet to 10,000 accidents a year, you're generating 100 billion in annual revenue, roughly. So 2.5 billion in legal costs is only 2.5% of revenue. And I noted here that's about the costly as credit card processing fees.
Ooh.
Right? Just to put that into perspective, right? Like credit card processing fees is something they're going to have to pay, or maybe with XAI, maybe they can save some money on that. But just to put that into perspective, yes, 10,000 lawsuits sounds crazy, but it may just be a cost of doing business, and it may not be a crazy cost after all. Right. Now, obviously, the priority is to make this as safe as possible. It's the march of nines. They want to be 99.79s reliable eventually. And I think I have a table here, Herbert, that kind of shows what that means, just to put some perspective around that. in terms of the March of Nines. Yeah, this one here. So just to go through this, third line down, let's say you have one accident per 1,000 miles. Okay, so over a human lifetime, over any given year, you would expect about 14 accidents if you drive 14,000 miles a year. And in a human lifetime, you would expect 1,260 accidents. Okay, so most of us are not getting that many accidents. So cars are safer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just drop down a couple of lines to one accident per 100,000 miles. Now you're expecting about 13 accidents over a 90-year human lifetime. And you're at 99.999, three nines reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the middle of the table, this is some data from last summer, some accident data for human-driven vehicles, 3.64 per million miles. That's with unreported accidents. And then reported accidents is 1.8 accidents per million miles. So human drivers are kind of in that 99.9996 or 9998 range. And you should expect to be in an accident between 2 and 5 times in your lifetime with that kind of accident rate.
Okay. That's current human drivers today.
I believe so. That's my recollection of what those numbers were. Yep.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense. I mean, I think the average human will have 2 accidents in their lifetime, 90 years of driving. Well, I don't know if that's all 90 years of driving, but and 4 from 5 unreported. Yeah, that makes sense. I like it.
Something like that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the next line down, if you get it down to 1 per million, and this is what I initially started with in my post, then you're at 99.49s reliable, and it's 1 accident in a lifetime.
Yep.
Right. And you drop that down to, if you get it to 1 per 10 million miles, then you're looking at 0.1 accidents in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you drop it down to 1 per 100 million miles, you're 0.01 chance of an accident in your lifetime. So the March of Nines is critical. And then, of course, a business at scale with millions of vehicles doing billions of miles, that March of Nines is critical from a lawsuit and legal cost perspective. One of the other things, Herbert, and you're showing here on the screen in terms of some things that sort of mitigate this. If FSD is improving the accident rate, improving the reliability by this much, then the cost savings to society, to insurance companies, to the healthcare system are massive. I think I recall some numbers, something like it costs us like $40 billion a year to deal with the costs of auto accidents in the United States, healthcare and insurance and so on. Maybe the number is even higher. And of course, it will result in fewer human lives lost. So let's not lose sight of that. That's what FSD will allow. And so, sure, maybe Tesla will have to bear some of this cost, but society at large will benefit massively. And I just concluded here that, this is why Tesla should start a robotaxi network as soon as FSD is safer than a human. And again, I think that's why they're starting now. It's because they're confident that it's much safer than a human driver.
So, look, so you put some numbers here. Basically, if Tesla waits until they are safer than a human and they launch it, then you're saying that even with the lawsuits, it's something that they can manage? Or do they need to wait until the next exponential improvement?
Well, certainly the sooner that they get to, the March of Nines, the sooner that they can improve FSD, it's going to reduce the accident, injury, and death rate down. That will reduce the number of lawsuits. That will reduce the legal costs. So absolutely, that's an imperative. But I don't think they have to wait until that happens.
So can they absorb it if they did get all those lawsuits, even at this level of just safer than a human, only instead of waiting for 10 times safer than a human?
I think so. I think with thousands or tens of thousands of vehicles, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you scaled FSD today, with what we're seeing to 1 million, then they probably have an issue.
Not yet.
But 6 months from now, 9 months, 12 months from now, FSD's improved.
Yep.
And then they can scale it much more rapidly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing about the FSD causing accidents is that Tesla actually, because of the data, I think you have a point here about data. One thing that insurance car drivers today have is no data. They don't know what's causing it. And I remember this point that was made before that made a lot of sense to me. Like when we're driving and we're taught how to drive, and what police officers use to flag me down would be speeding. If I speed too fast is one example. Or if I, these are things that they use to give you a ticket, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out through data Speeding actually is not correlated with more deaths or more accidents. It's what matters more is how fast you turn on a curve. And so Tesla's safety score would track how fast you turn on a curve more than they do. They don't penalize you so much for speeding. Of course, there's a certain amount. I'm not saying that if you go 1,000 miles an hour, 500 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, no. But the 10 miles an hour above or below does not actually correlate with more accidents. It's when how fast you take when turns. And so Tesla actually penalizes you when they see that you do enough of that, because data showed them that that's what matters. The only reason why cops don't flag you that is because it's not easy for them to track. They can't track that as easy as it is for tracking your speed. That's just an example of Tesla actually knows what caused the vast majority of accidents, and then they know what to do to stop it, and how their car behaves to stop the most common accidents in the world. They've already kind of they're hitting the top ones, and then they're going down. Okay, what's the next most common accident that we haven't been able to solve yet? And they'll solve that one, and then the next one, and the next one.
It's interesting, Herbert, because the issues that we've seen so far with FSD and the Robotaxi rollout over the last few days, going into the wrong lane, stopping and
but you got to clarify that. They go, oh my God, the Tesla went on the wrong lane. Oh my God, how dangerous is that? No. You got to clarify it. It went on the wrong lane when there's no one around.
Right.
When there's no one around, it went to the wrong lane to get you to that left turn. If there was somebody there, or there saw cars heading in, if there was cars on the opposite lane, it wouldn't have done that. Because that's the key situation. The other one was people said, oh, they caught me in my live stream that the car was doing 39 miles per hour on a 35 zone. And then they forgot to say what I said later, which is, let's take a look at the surrounding flow of traffic, and everybody is not only going to say they're going faster. And if the car actually slowed down to 35, it's actually more dangerous. What you're trying to do is prevent an accident, not necessarily stick to a rule. Let's say you saw a car coming, uncontrolled brakes, and it's heading down your direction. Do you say, oh, I should never cross the white line to get out of the way? That's a no-no. The lawsuit, it's a legal law. I should not cross the white line. No, get out of there. That's your goal is to prevent accident, not to follow the rule 100%.
And I would say too, driving my own vehicle around Austin, a city that I've never driven around before, I've gone into the wrong lane several times here, way more frequently than Robotaxi has, for brief periods of time, because I didn't know where the lane was, couldn't see it, or whatever it was. It's something that human drivers do. It doesn't necessarily mean that the vehicle's made this massive mistake, particularly when it self-corrects, right? So, but just back to the liability side of things for a second. I'm assuming that Tesla's going to have to bear the full legal cost of all this.
I do think so, yeah.
Right. Now, another scenario is I think that a lot of insurance companies are going to look at the autonomous vehicle market actually as an opportunity. Because no longer do they have to worry about a drunk driver, somebody who is texting and driving that they're insuring, right? They're insuring an autonomous vehicle. That might be a risk that actually diversifies their insurance base. So a lot of insurance companies actually may be quite excited to be involved and offer insurance to companies like Tesla if they want it. So that's another interesting development too that we might see. So, let's not just assume that the insurance industry is not involved in here in some way. Tesla may not have to face this cost themselves. Now, at the end of the day, the cost of this is built into the fare, to the ride fare. Everybody will be paying for this, which is again why I think if Tesla can drive down the accident rate over time, which is what FSD will do, then the cost of that insurance, the cost of the legal settlements, all the legal fees will go down over time as well, which will allow the fare price to come down.
That's a great thought. That's a very interesting thought that even insurance companies might actually prefer this, and they will help, and as opposed to thinking that they're going to fight it. Okay, so let's just back up a bit, right? Human drivers today in the United States, there's 44,000 deaths. I think there's 2 to 3 million injuries each year. Obviously, that translates to huge, cost for the repair of the vehicles, cost of the repair of, city streets, cities, those kind of things. So it's a massive concern. I mean, 44,000, didn't you say one time, wasn't it like, it's as if 2 airplanes are falling out of the sky and killing everybody in it every day. That's
Yeah,
how bad this is.
or an airplane every 2 days or something like that. It's some crazy number. Yeah.
Some crazy number. Like you wouldn't accept that if you heard that. And that's what human drivers are doing today. Then they're saying, well, hey, you're doing a robotaxi. How dare you? Look at this. It went on the wrong lane. Oh, look at that. It sped up. Do you know how dangerous this is? The idea, though, is that, do you or don't you agree that at some point AI is going to be better than a human? That's why we're doing this. So are you going to shut down the program if it kills one person? It's like one. It's got to be perfect. Before we roll it out, it's got to be perfect. Got to be 0 people dead. I don't care about the 44,000 people dying each year. It's got to be 0 per person dead this year. Otherwise, don't put, you know what I mean? Okay. So there will be accidents. There will be deaths. But the question is, when do you roll it out? And then what you've done is said, okay, look, if it was safe as a human, you're saying, hey, because Tesla said that, or Elon said, we might actually not roll it out at one as safe as a human. We might need to wait till it's 10 times as safe as a human, just because of acceptance by regulatory bodies or the public. But you're saying no. Yeah, as soon as you get this safe as a human, you should roll it out already, and that they could at that point absorb the legal costs because it's part of their service, right?
Yeah, I think what I would say is if it's only as safe as a human, it's no problem if you've got a few hundred or a few thousand vehicles. You can handle the legal issues with that, but you probably can't scale that to 1 million.
Okay.
If you do, you're going to be swamped in lawsuits, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, they can roll it out into the hundreds, into the thousands. And then as FSD improves, that will allow them to scale much more rapidly.
Yeah. This is a thought that I haven't heard anybody else describe, research. So this is great that you brought this up. I'm confident, of course, as you are, that FSD is continuing to improve. Just how fast compute, look how fast they're building Cortex 2. Yep. And they're already at 20,000. The current FSD that we're using was at 20,000 NVIDIA H100 equivalent GPUs. But now we're talking that they have 300,000. Maybe they'll have 1 million. I don't want to conflate what XAI is doing with what Cortex is or what Tesla's doing, but they are building Cortex 2, and they are rolling out Dojo 2 or Dojo 3 next year. So when do you think that they would be saying, hey, I want 1 million cars that are robotaxis? Is that next year? Is that 2 years from now? 3? What is your understanding?
Yeah, again, it depends on our view of how quickly the March of Nines happens with FSD. There is no doubt that the more compute you apply to this problem, the quicker you can move on this March of Nines. In terms of a specific time period, it's just a matter, I think, of iterating on FSD and improving it constantly. When will FSD be ready so that Tesla can roll out 1 million vehicles? I don't know that I have that answer for you today. I think that's something I would need to think about a bit more deeply. But I would imagine with the pace of FSD, if they can crank out a new model, let's say every 6 months or so, even every 9 months, that I would imagine within a year and a half, a couple of iterations of that would get them well on the way. Yeah. In terms of improving FSD enough so that if you scaled Robotaxi, that the accident, injury / death rate is also falling rapidly.
Yeah. If my understanding is this, okay, so Elon said that customers like us, me and you, who own a Tesla, will not be able to add our cars into the Robotaxi network until the second half of next year. Mm-hmm. That Cybercabs will be in scale production next year. But if you think about scale production, what's your number? I would say 50,000 cars. So let's say at the best, let's say that they really are able to produce 50,000 Cybercabs. Then they add our cars into the system. Then we're talking about maybe a couple 100,000, 300,000, and they probably won't let us all add it. It's all going to be limited by cities as well, by the way. So, right, it's I think it's like the way we're describing that is like it's going to just go naturally. It's not like anybody's saying there's going to be 1 million robotaxis next year. They're only at safe as a human. It's going to be just in time. By the time they want to go to 1 million, they would already hit these. metrics?
I think it could coincide quite nicely in terms of as you open up new cities, there's a certain amount of vehicles you want to apply to that. FSD supports that. They can handle the number of potential legal challenges that come from that. And then over time, as FSD is improving, as you're opening up more cities, there's a natural demand for more and more vehicles, and it all just kind of flows together. Will it be as perfect as what I just said? I don't know. Maybe there'll be some bumps along the way, right? And we should expect some bumps, right?
There's a chance that we're already at 10 times safer than a human this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Because we don't know yet where we're at today with our FSD that we're using, but the FSD that they're using right now in Robotaxi is the second version. Then there's a 4 times parameter increase of a new FSD version coming out by the end of this year. It could be, cross fingers, that one is already at 10 times safer than a human.
It could well be.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's not standing still. Sometime in the following year, it's even better than that. So
if by the end of this year, you already have something 10 times, your data shows that they can already get to 1 million. if they truly wanted to by certainly next year.
I'm hoping that FSD development isn't a limit on scale, but it would be on my list as potential factors. I'm not here today to say that this is the issue that I'm worried about, right? The main thing, but I think it's an issue for people to be aware of and think about. And again, something I haven't heard other people talk about.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I think it's good to get it out there, get everybody's input and feedback on it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that have some other ideas around this, and that's great. I'd love to hear it.
My understanding is that the vendor will need to shoulder the legal liability. I think there was a rule that they're going to roll out in, I can't remember which country it is now, Croatia? No, Czechoslovakia? No. I forget which one is it now, where they said that by January 2026, they have a rule that says that if you're using supervised FSD or something like that, if it's on FSD then if the accident occurs, the vendor's responsible. But if the vendor tells you better take over, it's your, there's a flash and then enough time and all that, then you're responsible. So that you're still possibly responsible if it's a supervised scenario and you need to take over and the system told you that it is. I thought that's a great system. That's a great way to, arrange it, organize it, communicate it. That's great. So that's supervised. Now, as soon as you say, no, this is Robotaxi like we're experiencing in Austin now, no, there's it's obvious there. Vendor is responsible for it.
And if you're in a cybercab and there is no pedal on wheels to take over, then it better work really reliably. Yeah.
This is great. Thank you, Cern. This is the first time somebody put a number to, number of lawsuits based on number of accidents, based on that. Could a vendor actually absorb that? Would they absorb it? And therefore, they would need to wait until they're going down the March of Nines. And that was another reason. And that makes a lot of sense now that you put it that way. Yeah. To me, what you just brought up is obviously FSD and also related to the accidents. That is, of course, the number one roadblock, bottleneck. The rest, I just can't see. I'm not as worried as all these other people. There's no way. It's only going to be 2,000 cars by the end of 2027, Cern. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's highly unlikely. And basically what they're saying with that is that FSD is not going to progress. Right, it's really all comes down to FSD's capability.
No, but even then, 2,000 cars means that it's not just FSD. It's like it's like,
I
don't know.
Even with where FSD is today, you could easily achieve that.
Yeah,
and of course,
it's kind of funny. Like it will be impossible for Tesla to launch this. FSD is not ready to do this. It'll be years, decades away. Now that's launched. Now it's okay, but they'll only do 2,000 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's more than 2 years, by the way. It's 2.5 years from now.
Yeah, that wouldn't even be a bear case in a model that I would build.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Cern. Again, if you guys want to see this kind of analysis, go to check out Cern at his X account, Cern Basher. Thanks, everybody. And check out his website at BrilliantAdvice.net. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.